and welcome to I Want to Talk About, the show where I talk about whatever I feel like. My name's Andrew, and today I want to talk about my new podcast. Oh my gosh, I am actually so fucking excited, you guys don't even know, okay? But let's back it up a little bit. I'm going to try and calm down a little bit so I can hopefully explain what this podcast is going to be, what it's going to look like, and hopefully get you a little bit more interested in watching it and listening to it. My new podcast is called The Complicated Women Podcast and is a show dedicated to discussing and dissecting the complex women of Dimension 20. To be clear, when I say complex women of Dimension 20, I do mean PCs and NPCs only. We're obviously going to be talking about the cast a little bit, just because, you know, the nature of the actual play format is that a lot of the performer's self ends up being put into these characters a lot of the time. But I want to steer clear of analyzing any real life people as much as I possibly can, because hey, that shit's fucking weird, and I don't want to be any part of that. Sorry! Also, if it wasn't obvious, or if you haven't been keeping up with Junior Year, which, by the way, go watch Junior Year, okay? Maybe you can skip the first, episode and a half, after the Night York fight is already done, you can, start there. Listen, okay, I'm not shy about the fact that I think the pilot episode of Junior Year is just bad, okay? I think it's bad, and I'm not afraid to say it, but the rest of the season is really fucking good, and the title of this podcast is a reference to, within the fiction of Fantasy High Junior Year, a fake podcast made up by Fig. So, what should you expect from episodes of the Complicated Women podcast? Every episode, I am going to invite on a very extra special guest to have a deep dive discussion into a specific character from Dimension 20 that I have deemed as that episode's complicated woman. And I'm intentionally keeping that qualification as vague as I possibly can, because when I inevitably do the Calroy episode of the Complicated Women podcast, I don't want people in my comments and in my mentions telling me that he's not a complicated woman. In terms of tone, I actually haven't recorded any episodes yet, so I can't say, this is the tone that this episode, that the premiere episode is going to be, because I don't actually know yet. But what I'm aiming for is something similar to this, where, you know, it's lighthearted, it's breezy, it's fun, but I'm not here to fuck around. I am a pretentious douchebag who's an English major, and I want to take this discussion seriously from an academic perspective. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast in the first place is because I think that media literacy is dead, or at the very least at death's door. And as a former secondary education major and current pretentious English major, I feel like it's almost my job to use this podcast as a way to hopefully jumpstart the critical minds of the Dimension 20 fan base. And, okay, that sounds really mean, but sometimes you need a mean person to tell you something true about yourself that other people won't tell you. And I think a lot of Dimension 20 fans are stupid. Oh my god. No, and okay. When I say that, I'm going to defend myself here, okay? When I say that, I'm not trying to be mean, okay? It is a mean thing to say, but what I mean when I say that is that there is a large part of the Dimension 20 community that watches this show strictly for its entertainment value. And that is perfectly valid. And that is like, you know, props to your mama, like, slay the boots down, housework occur. But if you are actively making the choice to not engage with the show critically and then decide to come online and spew all these frankly misogynistic opinions about the female characters and also the women playing them, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I'm sorry. And again, peace and love, but you are actually a fucking idiot. And, maybe this is the podcast for you because it'll help jumpstart your critical thinking skills. And I think that part of the fan base is this manifestation of two separate phenomena. The first is this tendency for non-traditional media or art to inherently be viewed as lesser than and not worthy of the same academic analysis that, the fucking white boys book club gets, right? And so Dimension 20, right, is already the product of a new media company, Dropout, but it's also getting that same thing from being in the genre of D&D actual play. Even the people who would take sort of an Ultra Mechatron Team Go or Kingpin Katie might not extend that grace towards Dimension 20 because it is this comedy, partially improvised actual play. So that's one of the sort of concepts that influences that part of the fan base. But the other part is that, unfortunately, a lot of time, real world misogyny manifests itself in the conversation around fictional women, especially fictional complex women, where the conversation is just automatically flattened in a way that conversations around male characters don't get, right? Male characters are often automatically afforded this grace and depth of character that simply isn't extended to their female counterparts. My goal with the Complicated Women podcast is to give these fictional women the respect and depth of discussion that they deserve, that they are often just not getting because misogynistic Reddit weirdos don't like when a woman is mean. Sorry, but, fucking call a spade, right? Like, I'm also like a faggot and I love talking about cunty women, so that's also a part of it. So, when should you expect episodes of the Complicated Women podcast to drop? What is our schedule going to look like? My first recording date is scheduled for this upcoming weekend, and I hope to have that first episode finished and edited sometime during the week of May 6th. Beyond that, my goal is to have one episode release at least every 2 weeks. Would I love to do an episode every week and get like a consistent, rigid schedule? Yeah, okay, that's the goal. But I don't know if you guys know this, but Dimension 20 episodes are really fucking long. Oh my god. I started, no spoilers for the premiere episode, but as I've started preparing for this first recording that I have this weekend, I realized that these episodes are really fucking long, and there's also a lot of them. And when you're watching them weekly, it really doesn't hit you the same way as when you're trying to prepare for a podcast and marathoning a bunch of episodes and you're like, okay, I have 10 episodes to watch and take notes on, and they're all 2+ hours. And I don't want to half-ass the prep work necessary to have a serious and informed academic discussion about these characters, right? Like I said earlier, I'm not here to fuck around. And unfortunately, what that means is that I might not be able to get episodes out as quickly as I would maybe like. I think one episode every 2 weeks is a reasonable goal for me to set, while also balancing my job that I have and my schoolwork. By the way, I'm not going to give any spoilers for who the premiere episode is about and like what guests I already have lined up. But I will say that I am very excited to be working with the people that I have reached out to and who have said yes. And if you know anything about me personally and my taste when it comes to Dimension 20, you'll probably be able to guess pretty easily who the premiere episode is going to be about, and also probably the second episode too. And I'd also like to say, I would really, really appreciate all the grace that you can give me while I'm sort of finding my footing here. I wanted to release these episodes as they are recorded rather than batch recording and releasing like seasons at a time, because that's like kind of how my brain works. I need like that immediate reward of like having finished a project and, you know, releasing it out into the world. And as a result of that, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here a little bit. The last time I tried to do a podcast, quote unquote, it was my senior year of high school, and it was very different. It was a scripted comedy, basically along the lines of the Thrilling Adventure Hour, if you've ever listened to that, which, if you haven't, by the way, go listen to Thrilling Adventure Hour. It's fucking fab. This project is a lot bigger, a lot more ambitious, and also it's been a good 5 years since I've done anything like this, so I am going to be learning as I go, so I would really appreciate any and all grace that you can have for me and my little show as I try to get her on her feet. Also, and again, I don't want to give any spoilers out, and I don't want to promise anything specific because we haven't really ironed out the details yet, but I have been in communication with some other Dimension 20 fans, and if you maybe weren't vibing with the sort of one-on-one interview style format that I described earlier, or if you think I'm a self-important douchebag with the faggiest voice in the universe, stay tuned. There may or may not be something coming down the pipeline that you'll be more interested in. So just stay tuned and keep an eye out for that. But Andrew, where can I stay tuned and keep an eye out? Thank you so much for that question. Probably the best way to keep updated on new episodes coming out is by subscribing to the Complicated Women Podcast channel on YouTube. That's at Complicated Women Pod on YouTube. Or you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Complex Women Pod. That's at Complicated Women Pod on YouTube and at Complex Women Pod on Twitter. And if you just really love the sound of my voice, or think I'm like smart and sexy, or like you made it through this whole video somehow, but you don't like Dimension 20 and don't want to listen to the podcast, you can also subscribe to this channel, my personal channel, where I do something a little less structured. The topics are gonna vary a little more widely. The first episode that I did was a album review, I guess, of the Tortured Poets Department. As for future videos, I am currently working on a very long scripted video about Dune. I think I'm about 13 pages into the script, and I'm not even done with the summary part yet. So it's going to be a while before that one comes out, but that is somewhere on the horizon. I also want to make a video about Challengers. That movie is so fucking good. And talking about complicated women, Tashi Duncan, Zendaya's character in that movie, is like final boss, the ultimate complicated woman. My plan is to go back to the theater to watch it a second time, either today or tomorrow, depending on how quickly I can get this video edited and uploaded. But that Challengers video should be coming soon. So if any of that interests you at all, please subscribe to this channel. You can also follow me on my personal socials pretty much everywhere at Andrew D. That is the @ symbol AT Andrew D. And anything that I say on my personal socials that relates to the Complicated Women podcast, I will be sure to retweet from the podcast account, so you don't need to put up with my unhinged ramblings if you just want news about episodes of the podcast. Hi there, Editing Andrew here. Just hopping in because I realize I forgot to say that I really want to hear who you guys want to hear us talk about on the podcast. I have my D20 blind spots just like everyone else. So your favorite complicated woman might not be top of mind for me, but that doesn't mean I don't want to talk about them, right? It just means that I need someone to suggest it. So let me know down in the comments who you would like to see on future episodes. I also just wanted to take a moment and really seriously thank everybody who has been really nice and supportive of me the past 2 days. I kind of decided to start this project on a whim. Like I literally made the cover art in like 15 minutes. You can probably tell because it kind of looks like shit. But I thought I would be lucky if I got like 15, 20 people to see the announcement. Truly, so many people have expressed how excited they are, and it just really means a lot to me. When you're an English major, people always ask you what you plan to do with your degree after you get it, and I never say the real answer because I think it's kind of embarrassing, but this really is my dream career, getting to do this kind of literary analysis of quote unquote unserious media in a format like this. Um, so it actually really does mean a lot that you all are excited to see this podcast because I am so excited to make it. Anyway, back to the outro. That is actually all the time I have for today. So, with all of that having been said, thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video, and I will see you next time.